Hello and welcome to the week 3 edition of the Base on Balls podcast. I'm your host, Cody. I'm joined tonight by Paul. And for the first time this season, Braxton is with us. Braxton, I'll ask you first. How are you doing, man?
I'm so happy to be back on the podcast, man. It's been a while. I didn't win this week, but I'm really happy to be here and spirits are high.
Absolutely. And Paul, I got to ask you, how's it going in Norfolk, man?
Well, I'll be the rain cloud to Braxton's sunshine and happiness tonight.
Yeah, we understand. We understand. So let's jump into an action-packed week 3. There is so much to talk about, but I think first we have to jump into David slayed Goliath. You know, the mighty has fallen. Tita's Nashville Sounds hands John Haidt his very first loss since joining the league. Before we jump into the matchup, I got to mention John Haidt's probably going to get crapped on for this feeble performance he put up in week 3. But before we do that, 23 straight weeks of wins that led him to an undefeated season last year, a championship, and he started out 2-0 this year. That's absolutely remarkable. Congrats on John Haidt. Congrats to John Haidt for that streak. But Tita doesn't care and ended it. So, Braxton, I will let you go first. What did you see in this matchup?
So I'm going to share a little story with our viewers here, or our listeners. I had the pleasure of going to a Mets game this week with John Haidt and friend of the league, Jomo. And basically what happened was we were just really enjoying Francisco Lindor just being Francisco Lindor right now. He's just not a good baseball player. You check that age number, it's a little bit over 30, and people were surprised by this. And I don't really know why. I'm just trying to warn him that this would happen. He rightfully he was winning, so I give him a pass, but since he lost, maybe he takes a look in the mirror here and realizes that maybe he should start selling some of these dudes off before their fossils in age catch up to them here. I mean, as much as I like the Yankees right now, and I think they're going to be very good, and I've watched every game, Aaron Judge not playing very well isn't getting talked about enough. 4.76 points per game since the season started here. That's unacceptable for a player of his caliber. And Luis Arias has also got off to a slow start. Nolan Arenado off to a slow start. Manny Machado off to a slow start. Matt Olson only had 8 points this week. Like, I know his big boys aren't being as big for him as they were last year, and Otani not pitching is definitely hindering his numbers every week. But really, I think John Haidt should start testing the market, try to retool a little bit here, because obviously there's still elite players on this team, but I don't think you should let it ride out into the ground. I think you should start trying to get some pieces for the future here and start building. But I know it might be overreacting. Oh my God, one loss. But seriously, some decisions need to be made in Hartford, or else I think this could be a more common theme than we realize.
Yeah, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate about John Haidt's team, and I do want to talk about Tita's performance because Tita did win. This wasn't just a John Haidt loss. This was a Nashville Sounds win. So I do want to talk about that. But I want to mention about John Haidt's team that is maybe can be a little positive is the offense scored 363 points this week. That is with Aaron Judge scoring 2 and Matt Olson scoring 8. Those are probably his 2 best bats combined for 10 points, and the offense still scored 363. The issue in Hartford is the pitching. The pitching has been trending downwards. We've noticed it. You've heard us talk about in the previous pods. kind of the bats were so good that maybe the lower pitching performance wasn't noticed as much, but this week it just caught up to him. 165 total pitching points. That is not going to beat anybody in the league. I think really, no matter how good your bats are. And I don't even know that it's injuries. I know there are some guys that are banged up, but really it's just bad performance after bad performance after bad performance. So I think the bats are fine and can carry. I get that that's kind of John Haight's way. And listen, it's worked. It is just the one loss, but the pitching is going to have to be fixed pretty quickly if he expects to continue to kind of start a new winning streak here in week 4. Paul, I'll let you go. What did you see in this matchup?
John Haight's top starting pitcher this week was some person named Rodri Munoz. I've never heard of that person in my entire life. He scored 22 points. That's bad. I mean, Corbin Burns was right there at 20 points. I mean, but Zach Gallen, 1 point. Max Fried, 2 points. Rodon, 1. Blake Snell, -6. He's got a problem. He's got a big problem. And Braxton touched on it that he needs to start selling or whatever. It might be a little bit too late for that because the value for a guy like Merrill Kelly, 35 years old, he's not going to get what he thinks he's going to get, I don't think. And his offense, yeah, I mean, Judge 2 points. Obviously, you don't expect Aaron Judge to only score 2 points in a full week. Same thing with Matt Olson. But yeah, he's got issues. Because as everybody knows, he has 3 prospects, which is the bare minimum in this league. So I don't know where he's gonna go. It's not like he has prospects that he can buy more. He's bought out essentially. I don't know how he's going to be able to add anything. I'm not saying it's full sell off, but he's got to be active. He's got to be a little bit more. Going to teams like Chad, who has a ton of prospects, or Comco, ton of prospects, and just like say, okay, I'll give you Merrill Kelly, but I want like 7 prospects. And start building that farm out so then he can buy when he needs to. But that's enough about him. Tita kicked ass this week, 675. Me and Cody argued, or not argued, but talked about it last week. Are the sounds for real? Yeah, they're for real. I mean, and again, is it the sounds or is it Tita? It's probably more Tita because he wheels and deals like no other. But yeah, this team is for real, and they're going to be there at the end of the year. I don't know if it's the playoffs. I don't know if it's just out of the playoffs. I don't know if it's in the championship. Tita has a good team. You don't want to play him. When you see the sounds on your schedule, you're in trouble.
Absolutely. And as we move on to the next matchup, I want to give a shout out to Reynaldo Lopez. I don't know if the Braves are lucky or if Tita's lucky or it's a combination of both, but Reynaldo Lopez has been an ace for Tita through 3 starts this year. I think he starts tomorrow against Miami. But big reason for success for Tita early on. We kind of felt the no-hitter in week 1 it felt fluky, the big victory he had, but he showed with a big win in week 2 and a massive win in week 3 that the Sounds are very, very much a force to be reckoned with as we move through the season. So looking around here, let's talk about I think the result is surprising, but I don't think that it was close. It's surprising. The Scott's Richmond Flying Squirrels take down Chad's Oklahoma City 89ers 684 to 663, a 21-point difference. Braxton, I'll let you go. What did you see in this matchup between Chad and Scott?
I see a lot of young players kind of coming into their own a little bit here and ascending to superstardom, like we had projected them to, like, a little bit last year. And, kind of, I've listened to you guys talk about it on a couple other podcasts, but I want to start with Scott. First of all, CJ Abrams is an absolute dog, like 73 points as a 22-year-old shortstop. I mean, like, these guys don't grow on trees. And we were talking about last year kind of how Scott always had really good bats and how we believe if these guys take the next step, it'll propel Scott in the standings. Like, performances like this from Abrams will definitely do that. He's surrounded himself a little more with some older bats that are consistent producers, like Cedric Mullins, 46 points, Bryce Harper, 46 points. Like, just good overall performances. And then the pitching, we were talking a lot about Scott having not great pitching this summer and throughout last offseason. But, like, look at this. Nestor Cortez, 39. Michael King, 37. Jordan Hicks, 23. Aaron Savali, 24. Like, Ranger Suarez, 67. Like, complete game shutout. Like, Scott got production everywhere, and they still tied in pitching points, 329, 329. Like, I think both of these teams are more legit than we give them credit for. I think that they're like, if you put up 650 points, you're going to probably win. And Chad just unfortunately got unlucky. But I think that both these teams are in really, really good shape. And we should really got to look out for these guys. Like,
For sure. And Paul, what did you see in this matchup?
They each scored 329 points with their arms. Exactly. They tied to the number with their pitching, that's impressive. A, that they were both at 329. It's a very solid performance from their pitching. But B, it just kind of shows that these are two young teams. Both missed the playoffs last year. Both dropped a pretty above average, very solid number of points in total for the week. I mean, it was only a 21-point difference, and it all came with the bats, obviously. So, and then to echo Bracton, 73 points from CJ Abrams. CJ Abrams kind of was written off a little bit at some points last year. I think he's really, he's played well so far this year, and I think that's going to just continue. And then for Chad, Jordan Westberg, I mean, I didn't give him away, but I don't remember what the trade was, but I kind of cast him off because I didn't think that he'd ever be very good with the Orioles. They have a crowded infield, Jackson Holiday, Gunner, bunch of prospects still in the minors. I thought he'd kind of be like the odd man out, and clearly not the case. 73 points this week, 2 homers, a triple. I mean, he's a very good player, and credit to Chad for identifying that. But I mean, overall, really, really solid matchup. Chad, nothing to hang your head on. Great week. You'll be there. You'll get your wins. And then obviously Scott, who's my arch nemesis. Great week, and that arrow for your team's just pointing up. So, congrats.
For sure. And for Chad, one thing I notice here, I talk about this a lot when we do these podcasts, is when you rely on young guys, you can get bit a little bit. Wyatt Langford, Colt Keith, and Evan Carter combined for 14 points, the three of them on Chad's team this week, all three of them. Now, you can ask any team in this league would take all three of those dudes. I mean, you want those guys. But this is part of Chad. It's new. He's, a turnaround quickly. There's going to be weeks where these guys put up 70 points, and there's going to be weeks where Evan Carter goes -6 over 15 at bats. So, it's kind of the up and downs of a young team. But that being said, he still scored 663, would have beat a lot of other teams. He ran into a buzzsaw this week. Chad, is a team that I've been kind of touting since the preseason, but Scott is who surprised me. as Braxton mentioned, the bats have always been legit. We talked about that for a while, but the arms really shocked me this week. Looks really deep and consistent. My worry is how can he keep this up with these guys? I mean, you know, a complete game shutout from Ranger Suarez can feel a little fluky. You can't exactly rely on that moving forward. Uh, what are you going to get out of guys like Ross Stripling, Jose Quintana? Jordan Hicks has been a solid contributor this year. Nestor Cortez either goes 39 or negative 39. It's kind of a roller coaster with him. So, that's going to be Scott's problem is kind of getting consistent production throughout the season, like he got consistent production through 7 days against Chad. So that will be the challenge there. But both these teams are going to be tough to play moving forward. We will jump over now and discuss. Let's rip the Band-Aid off a little bit. Let's talk about Connor with an upset win, 517 to Paul's 494. Paul, you fall to 0-3. I'm going to go to you first, man. What's on your mind about this week?
My team stinks. Connor did good. Congrats, Connor. I'm good.
All right. Braxton, what did you see in this matchup?
See, Connor is John Height, but with lesser bats and a farm. I feel like these guys are pretty good players. I mean, like Wilson Contreras put up 48 at the catcher position. That just doesn't happen. Like that, Connor has a great eye for identifying these bargain players, and similar to Tita, he trades them when they're at their most. Like he's gonna get guys for cheap, and he's gonna flip them, but he's also gonna use them for longer than like a week. But like he's using them and they're winning. Like I'm really impressed by Connor, and not saying I like where Paul's going though, because we're going to talk about all these deals very soon. But let's not discount some of the good performances on Paul's team here. And George Kirby had 56 in a 2-start week. That's solid. But I want to just say congratulations to Connor, and that's really all I got to say.
Yeah, Connor definitely deserves some congratulations. I think, let me go down here and check real quick because I don't want to misspeak. That was Connor's first win of the season. So, yeah, he's flirted with it the first 2 weeks with victories. And, I know it feels good for him to get a win this week. He's been in every matchup he's played, and I expect him to be moving forward. But the story here is going to be Paul and the Norfolk Tides. To hear Paul say it, the sky's falling, and I get it. He's 0-3. He didn't expect to be 0-3. But looking down through here, it's kind of the perfect storm for him, if you will. Offense scored 323 points. That's exactly, in my opinion, where Paul would probably expect his offense to be. Of course, he would love, anything better is great, but if your offense scores 300 plus points, you're in the matchup. Okay. Kyle Schwarber's been productive for him. Jaron Duran has been productive. I know he just got him this week. Very productive player. Gunnar Henderson's Gunnar Henderson. Josh Naylor is going to be a huge addition to this offense. The offense is fine. I don't think Paul's got any qualms with the offense. I don't think he needs to have any qualms with the offense. It all boils down to pitching. So we look at it and we say, okay, Tanner Houck got a complete game shutout, 74 points. I hate to see that go to waste, but at 3 of 4 starts for Tanner Houck has been at least 38 points. I mean, this guy has been absolutely incredible for Paul this year. George Kirby looks to have bounced back. He's got to find some positivity in that. But then when I look down through here and I think to myself, this is just horrible luck that it all happened in the same week. I mean, look at some of these numbers. Adbert Alzolay goes minus 17 for the week. AJ Puck, minus 13 for the week. Chris Paddock, who's no longer a Norfolk Tide, minus 17 for the week. Frankie Montas could not have been worse for Paul this week. He gets blown up in his first start. He throws like 10 pitches today and dies. Minus 15 for the week. Horrible luck. Okay. Dakota Hudson minus 12. You know, we all seen that coming. But I don't think this pitching is horrible. Okay. I would probably rank it, even with the bad performances, fine. And I think if your offense scores 323 points a week and your pitching can be fine, you're going to win a lot of matchups. The problem for Paul this week is the pitching was not fine. And without Tanner Hawk's incredible 74-point performance, it would have been worse. Far, far worse. So you bring in Logan Webb, and you brought in Bobby Miller, right, with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Okay, I know he's on the IL. I'm not sure how long he will be out. But Paul's got to kind of, in my opinion, leave the offensive alone and use ways to maybe go out and find some consistent pitching, which is the name of the game, right? That's the hardest thing in this sport, in this league, to do, is find consistent pitching. But that should be Paul's focus. Take a page out of Tita's handbook. Maybe don't go out and pay for the Logan Gilberts, the Freddie Peraltas, the Jared Joneses of the world that are sky high, but go out and get you a Seth Lugo. You know, go out and get you a Michael King. Go out and get you some guys like that that kind of fits the Tanner Hawk mold, and mix these guys in with what you have. And I think you can right this ship really quickly. 0-3 feels like I said, like the sky's falling, the season is over, blow it up and tank. But it's a 20-week season. There's 17 matchups left. You know, you don't have to set the world on fire to get back to 300, you know, or 500, excuse me. And I just think it's not as bad as it appears. I don't think these guys, you're going to have, you know, 5 pitchers go minus 20 for the week like you had this week. So, you know, Paul's got some work to do on the pitching side. I know he knows that. I just think that maybe shift the focus, instead of paying a ton for big arms, just go after some cheaper, consistent arms, which I think it was yesterday Paul traded for Jordan Montgomery, and we'll talk about that in the trade part. But those are the kind of exact trades that I'm talking about that Paul needs to right the ship and get back to his winning ways.
You let me know when you find a cheap arm. You let me know.
Well, we'll talk about. There's been some cheap arms out there.
Okay.
There's been some cheap arms out there.
You
I
let me
think
know.
like the probably the debate on cheap arms would be, everybody views cheap differently, right? So I may see 2 middling prospects as cheap. You may look at it like cheap is a worst. Like if a guy's going for anything more than a worst, it's not cheap. But I mean, listen, go look at Tita's every pitcher he owns, and look what he paid for all of them. I mean, they're all cheap in my opinion. I don't think he really broke the bank to get any of those guys.
Paul,
So,
I got you Soroka for a trade stip right now. That's the
Yeah,
cheapest.
see, that's
the
not
cheapest
the kind
it
of arm
goes.
Paul
Yeah,
needs.
I know. But
I have 3 of those. I have Dakota Hudson, I have Alex Wood, and I have Frankie Montes. They all went fucking
Yeah,
in.
see, Braxton, you forgot. Paul wants to win, so he's going to avoid Soroka. Okay, we'll move on now to the 4th matchup of Week 3. Let's go to Clearwater Beach Dogs. Take care of Homco's Kannapolis Cannonballers. Matchup was never close. 685 to 482. Homco falls to, let me make sure, 1-2 on the year. Paul, I'll let you go first. What did you see in this Hindog Homco matchup?
Hamko needs to shake up his roster. I shook up my roster this week. I didn't win, obviously, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but he's got too many guys that are a little bit inconsistent, I think. And I'm not saying you just sell your whole team and just get all prospects. I'm not saying you sell all your prospects and buy major leaguers, but kind of mix and match a little bit. Try and identify guys that we talk about on this podcast that are consistent players. And that's that. If I'm Humco, that's what I'm doing. Hendog doesn't really need much to talk about. 349 with the arms, 336 with the bats. Just chalk up another solid week for Clearwater, who is and has been my top team in this league, and I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
And Braxton, what did you see with this matchup?
I mean, I saw some fluky stuff kind of from Hendog. I mean, like 57 points from Cutter Crawford in a 2-start week. I don't think we can rely on that. I don't think we can rely on 42-point outings from Spencer Turnbull every week. I don't think we can rely on just outrageously insane performances from bullpens and 41 from Yasei Kikuchi. Like, obviously, the pitching here, 349 to 224, was a big part of why Hen won. But I don't know if that's you were talking about. You used the word consistent. I don't know if that's going to be consistent. The bats are, though. I mean, Corbin Carroll 33, Kyle Tucker 55, Acuna 50. The big boys got it done. Even except Pete Alonso only had 18 for the week. Like, I guess you give or take a little bit here, but I agree with what Paul was saying. Homco could be in a retool situation. Maybe this week is like this week Homco does what Paul did last week, and if so, that could make for a very interesting time for us in the league as well. Because I mean, Glaber Torres 12, not obviously not like him. Nick Castellanos minus 1 point for a week. That's not good. Garrett Crochet minus 12. Like, there's some stuff to be done here. I definitely agree with Paul, but I think it could make for some interesting times this coming up week.
Yeah, Paul's right. I think Homco is going to be forced to shake things up, or the losses are just going to start to kind of mount up for him pretty quickly. It was good to see Tristan McKenzie, even though it was against Oakland, kind of get back on track. He had been terrible to start the year. Sonny Gray with 2 strong outings this week. Dylan Cease. That was nice for Humco. Looks like Garrett Crochet has kind of fell back down to earth a little bit with a minus 12 start against Philly. Humco's got some work to do. I do not think that he's in a position where, like I said, mentioned about talking about Paul's team, where I just kind of felt like there was some down performances that all kind of mounted up on Paul in one week that caused the loss. I think with Homco, it's a little different. It's been kind of 3 weeks of really inconsistent performances. And the solution would be shake things up. So it'll be interesting to see what Paul did for Hendog. 336 with the bats, 349 with the arms. I think the bats has kind of been what we've seen all year. Hendog's not going to score less than 300 offensively. This offense is just too good. It's the arms, and I think Brackton's right when it comes to the arms. 349 with Hendog, that's going to be the complication. I don't think Hendog can reach that number consistently to have him in the mid to high 600s. I think the arms is going to hold this team back, unless he just keeps shocking the world with performances like Brackton mentioned with Kikuchi and Turnbull and those type guys. So I don't particularly foresee that happening. I think Hendog's going to kind of drop a little bit when these arms really start to kind of even out and play like themselves a little more. Or maybe Hendog makes some moves and go out and get some pitching himself. So To me, that's where this team kind of falls behind the other top teams in the league. But the offense is just so good. It's going to keep Clearwater in just about any matchup he's in. So we will move on now and talk about. Let's talk about Dave squeaking out his first win of the season over Smells Chihuahuas, 528 to 499. Braxton, I'll let you jump in here first. What did you see with this matchup?
I don't have a ton to say about this. I mean, they're two rebuilding teams battling it out. I don't think Smell plans on winning a lot of games this year. I mean, he owns the entire draft. I feel like Smell this year is kind of how Chad was last year. But I do want to point out for Dave, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, the two Tigers combined for 80. So that's a great week for them. And he did get some good pitching performances out of Jake Irvin, Ryan Papayat, Kyle Gibson, Trevor Williams, Tyler Rogers. Like some guys for Dave stepped up when he needed it against Smell, which a winnable game. But Smell had some good things go right for him too. Ben Brown, 8 innings, 42 points. Tanner Beebe, 40 points. Like I think this is more of an evaluation year for both teams, but it's fun to see them match up against each other and who perform well and everything. So.
Yeah, not surprised to see Smell take the L here. Dave is definitely more inclined to try to put pieces together to compete, and we'll talk about it in the trades. But it's like tonight he traded for Bailey Ober. Um, Dave's bats are decent, fine, I guess you could say. The arms is what's lacking, but he's working, trying to get some pitchers in here that can help him compete. For Smell's focused on the future. He's putting together the best team he can in the interim, and if he beats you, he beats you, and if he don't, he don't. And so, that's kind of what it is with his team. But for Dave, a good win to get his first win of the season. And Paul, I'll let you go. What did you see with this matchup?
Edge to Smell for the number one pick in the draft next year. That's kind of the whole breakdown that we had going into this matchup. Ben Brown, huge player, huge addition, I think, for Smell. He had a quality start this week, and he picked up a hold. So whenever you can have a player that can do both, that's a good player, in my opinion, especially for a rebuilding team like Smells. For Dave, as Cody mentioned, he got Bailey Ober tonight. Kind of an up and down pitcher. He's been more up recently than down. Ryan Papayat's a great pitcher for Dave, a young pitcher. He didn't break 300 points with either the bats or the arms, but it was good enough to get the win this week, and that's what the name of the game is. So, good for Dave, and I'm not looking forward to playing that bullpen that he's got, or just him in general. So,
Well, that's a good transition. You mentioned Smell may have locked up the number one pick in the draft. Braxton says, "Hold my beer," as he gets absolutely throttled by Bry this week, 755 to 489. Braxton, you're 0-3. What's going on in Bismarck?
I mean, it's a different kind of 0-3 than what people are used to. Like, I mean, I didn't know how many games I was expecting to win this year, but you guys have said it with my team. Like, when I rely on young players, they go up and down. I mean, there are weeks Anthony Volpe goes 70 points, and there are weeks like this where he strikes out 9 times and then finishes with 3 points. Like, Jackson Holiday still has yet to dip into the positive points. I believe he has -4 total points in his MLB career so far. So there's that. Not necessarily the happiest to see that. I hope they send him down, but I feel like I got some dogs on this team. Jackson Merrill and Jackson Churio. The Jackson Five, for the large part, except for Holiday, right now is doing what they're supposed to do. And Bryce Terang is really coming on here. I feel like he's really been a positive for me here. and Vinny Pasquantino another 61 points and a home run, netting me $900 in a home run parlay. Thank you for that, Mr. Vinny P. But yeah, you guys have said it right. Just my pitching isn't there. I'm doing what I can to retool and fix it as best as I can, but at the end of the day, I mean, Jared Jones is a dog, another 28 points, but I really need guys like Hunter Brown to step up. I really need more out of Graham Ashcraft. Nick Nastrini got -2 points in this week, so I don't know. I just some bright spots can happen, I feel like, but I don't know. I like where my team's headed. This is a good 0-3 for me, I feel like.
Absolutely. For me, looking at this, Braxton, yeah, you kind of covered it with your team. I mean, they're young. You're going to have inconsistent performances. I was hyping up Nolan Gorman last week. He clearly heard it and wanted to make me look stupid. 0 for 17 with 10 strikeouts for -10. That's impressive. That's like blind Dan Ugla. I think I called him Dan Ugla last week. That's like blind Dan Ugla. That's terrible. Anyways, but you're right. Anthony Volpe's going to have 70-point weeks and he's going to have 3-point weeks. It's all about finding that consistency. Vinny Pasquantino had a great week for you. You've moved him around a lot, and the pitching's got to get better. But Brian Bellows a great place to start. Hunter Brown may actually be shit. I'm not sure. We're going to stay tuned and see what happens. Jared Jones is looking like a good get for you. Nick Nastrini had a good first start, a decent first start, but kind of got hit around by Philly today. But yeah, it's all about the wait and see approach with the Bismarck Larks. There's some very high end talent there, so I expect things to, for the future to be bright. When I look at Bryce's team, 755, great performance. I've got to say, O'Neal Cruz freaking stinks. I mean, the guy is terrible. 6 points this week for Bry. And I mean, the strikeouts are so bad. I do think it could hold him back against a high-end team in a close matchup. 57 points from Starling Marte. Bra has a lot of luck, so that helped him this week. But, yeah, really good performance from Bra, pitching 383 points. Really strong. Logan Webb gave him 40 points before he traded him. Joe Musgrove, 47 points, but it was across 2 starts. Pablo Lopez, 34 points. New addition, Nick Lodolo, 34 points. Zach Eflin had a really, really strong 2-week start, 62 points. He did lose Christian Javier today. The Astros rotation is just beat up right now, but that's going to be tough to replace, losing Christian Javier. It looks like he didn't start Jesus Luzardo this week. That's interesting. But yeah, Bry is, really strong team. I think he's up there with the top 3 or 4 teams in the league. Some people may say top 2, but he's got to get a new shortstop because O'Neal Cruz is absolutely dog crap. Paul, I'll let you go. What did you see in this matchup?
You guys covered it, so the only extra thing I'll say is congrats to Bracken for completing the Jackson 5, snagging Jackson Job for me this week, which we'll talk about. But that, and then I just wanted to laugh a little bit extra at Nolan Gorman, 0 for 17 with 10 strikeouts. That's insane. But yeah, Jared Jones proved me wrong, as he has been, and as he probably will continue to. Andrew Abbott, good player. Braxton, obviously looking for the future with his youth and all that, and he's doing a good job of collecting it and holding it. And I'm interested to see how long that'll last. I'm assuming it'll last long if he's not worried about the playoffs this year. So it'll be very interesting to see how they develop in the next few years.
Braxton, do you have an answer for Nolan Gorman's performance this week?
Bry Voodoo Magic. I expect more next week. Yeah.
Okay.
But I do want to say congrats to Bry, though. Bry's one of my best friends in this league, and I'm glad that he put up 755, and it's like the second most scoring in the league under you, Cody, by like 20 points. So even if I had a good week and like Chad or Dave, or not Dave, Scott, I would have lost by about 100. So like, I'm not too worried about it. Move on to the next one, I guess.
Okay, are you ready to admit that O'Neal Cruz does stink?
I would love to talk badly about O'Neal Cruz and diminish his trade value so that I could get him for cheap. Yes, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
Brian,
right.
he stinks. Trade him to me for a worse,
He
please.
does stink.
That,
Like, he
yeah.
actually stinks, though.
Brian, I'll give you Zach Neto and 2 worse right now. Come on over.
Okay. We
Yeah.
will move on to our last
Great.
matchup of week 3. Really good matchup. My Hot Rods took down Jab's Sea Dogs 774 to 632. Paul, you didn't talk much on the last matchup. I'll let you go first here. What did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, obviously Cody has a solid rotation, solid bats lineup. Really deep, really strong. Ellie continues to prove everybody wrong. He's an absolute dog, 67 points. Anybody that's still trolling Ellie is exactly that, trolling. Mike Trout obviously has been class of the league for over a decade, 50 points, still kicking it, still doing a good job. Casey Mize, 2-start week, 57 points. Today, though, was obviously a really good day for him. He got his first win in like 3 years or something, MLB win. So good for him. Verlander comes back, is strong. 40 years old, still killing it. Doval, Clase, Evan Phillips. Evan Phillips only had 1 inning pitch this week, which is abnormal for a good Dodgers team. So his bullpen's good. His starters are good. His bats are good. If I sound like a broken record, it's because Cody's really good, has a really good team. To talk about the Sea Dogs here real quick, to talk about Jab's team. He has good talent too. Just about 300 points from the bats and arms each. Good bullpen. 80 points out of Aaron Nola in the 2-start week, really solid. Bryce Miller's had a great year so far for Seattle. So, I mean, there's nothing really necessarily that he has to hang his head about. He's still got a great team. Those bats are still killing it. Tristan Casas, unfortunate injury this week. Doesn't sound super serious. Maybe a few weeks, but it shouldn't be too bad. Bobby Wick, kind of a down week, only 21 points, 24 at bats. Not something that he should be expecting week in and week out. But, Jab's got a great team. I think his pitching is actually starting to get catch up a little bit with his bats, which if that actually does happen, then, Jab's going to have a great team. So congrats to both teams. Both teams had really solid weeks.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention, we talked about last week with my team. Last week, my offense scored 364 and my pitching scored 372. And we kind of talked about the balance there. This week, my offense scored 382 and my pitching scored 392. So still love to see that out of my team. Kind of both ends of my fantasy team contributing. Really had a strong week. Really like the way that my team is going right now. Mitch Keller and Matt Gore didn't provide much for me this week, which was a little alarming because Jab's team is yoked. And I stayed kind of worried moving through the week, but my other guys were kind of able to step up and provide. For Jab, Paul, I think you nailed it perfectly. This is a really good team. I don't think Jab's got necessarily anything to worry about. He falls to 2-1 on the year. I think Jab's going to win a lot of games. I think he got good performances both offensively and from the pitching side of things. Emerson Hancock with a good start tonight. He's been good for Jab this year, so that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think Jab's fine. I think my team just played really, really well this week. Braxton, I'll let you go wrap us up on the matchups. What did you see with this matchup?
I mean, y'all pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, the big boys played very well for Cody. I mean, 45 for Adley, and then Ellie De La Cruz pains me every day that I traded this guy. I can't even believe it. He continues to amaze me, even though I don't own him. I hopefully can maybe we get one day get him back again if I'm lucky. But just great week for Cody. It's the highest scoring team in the league this week. And again, I echo what you guys say about Jab. I mean, if you put up 638 most weeks, you're not losing. So I really like the team that he has. I think I'm higher on his pitching than even he is, but let's get some guys coming back from injury maybe a little bit. And bats continue to roll. Jab's going to be scary. This could potentially have even been a finals preview in week 3. So we were pretty lucky to see that, I feel like. And you mentioned some guys had down weeks for Jab. I mean, 21 for Bobby Witt, 25 for Jordan, 14 for Corey Seager. That's not going to happen every week. So it'll be interesting to see where Jab goes going forward, but I don't think he has anything to worry about. And then Cody, you're the class of the league, always have been, in my opinion. You're the team to beat. So that's the team I'd like to have. So we'll see what happens going forward, but good week for both teams.
Well, I appreciate that, Braxton. And we will wrap up the week 3 matchup analysis and move into the trades of the week and discuss those. Tita's in our league, so we've got a whole lot of trades to talk about. We will start with kind of Paul's first big move of the week. This was a late Sunday night, I guess you could say early Monday morning. Tita gets Nico Horner, Anthony Santander, and J.R. Ritchie. Paul gets Jaron Duran and Brendan Donovan. Paul, I'll let you talk about this one. Why did you make this move?
Great question. Don't know. Lost this one, I think, for sure. Nico decided that he wanted to be Nico right after I traded him. Santander did the same thing. Brendan Donovan's a bench player. Don't know why I got him. And Jaron Duran's good. He's a good outfielder for me, but yeah, he stinks. So trade stunk.
Okay, well, I see it a little differently. Nico did have a good week for Tita, but Jaron Duran had a great week for you. So I think all in all, those guys are pretty similar. The Donovan Santander part of the trade probably not great. Santander can be or Santander, I think so. I don't know. Anyways, he can be a productive player. So interesting deal there. I think at the time you were probably looking for some outfield help and was feeling pretty comfortable at second base. Did you lose a guy to injury at second base this week?
No.
No. That's
I have
Ozzy out.
no excuses.
Do you have what?
I have no excuses.
Okay. All right. The next trade, I just want to touch on this quick. This is really interesting because Braxton's never done this before. Braxton traded for Craig Kimbrell. He gave Tito Lewis Varland and Landon Knack. Braxton, why did you trade for someone over 30?
I don't know. I feel like I got a good deal for Varland. I mean, usually in my mind in this league, you can get 2 worse for a pitcher. That's a good deal. And I valued Varland as 2 worse in this case, so I gave up 3 worse and a pick stipulation for a big time closer, and now I have 3 big time closers, which I'm happy about. Clay Holmes, Craig Kimbrell, and Carlos Estevez. I mean, I've seen a lot of teams like Scott and like others have a great bullpen and use that to keep them in games. So, I mean, like you said, the season's still young. So if I have 3 really solid closers that bulk up the pitching numbers every week, who knows what can happen. So I thought it was a pretty fine deal. not going to kill me. Like,
Interesting. Okay, the next trade we'll talk about, and we got both of you guys on here. Bracton gets Jackson Jobe and Max Rajic. Paul gets Marcelo Mayer, Carson Williams, and Kyle Teal. Paul, I'll let you go. What did you think about this move here?
Probably the only trade I made this week that I'm actually genuinely 100% okay with. Jackson Jobe's a great player. I like him a lot. I've said that he's the number one pitching prospect in this league. I know Paul Skeens exists, but I mean Jackson Jobe, his control is great. Strikes a lot of guys out. I think he's going to be a good pitcher for a long time. But when you can get guys like Marcelo Mayer, Carson Williams, and Kyle Teal, all three of which, in my opinion, are probably in the top 40 at least, top prospects, that's a deal that I just wasn't going to turn down. Two of the three guys that I just said aren't even on my team anymore because there was a lot of trades that happened after this. But for me, for this, I know pitching is king around here, but in terms of just strict value, this was one I couldn't turn down.
And Bracton, what do you think about this move?
so as soon as Paul put Job on the block, I was kind of surprised because I tried to get in on Job in the past and was not not met with negotiation there. So I kind of pounced on this. I gave up a lot, but I was deep at shortstop and second base because I have Volpe, I have Holiday, I have guys like that. So Mayer and Williams are kind of expendable. I'm gonna miss Kyle Teal. Kyle Teal is one of my favorite prospects, but I kind of want to embrace this Jackson 5 kind of identity. And when I got Job, I was like, okay, like I'm Jackson Ferris away, and that shouldn't take me very long to do. And that was actually probably like, oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now, 4 hours after this trade. But Paul's right on everything he said about Job. I love it, and I think that outside of Paul Skeens, I own the next three best pitching prospects in baseball with Mizorowski, Jackson Job, and Ricky Tiedemann. So future's bright in Bismarck. I got some baby aces that are coming up, but I think Paul got a really good deal here too. I acknowledge I had to pay up to get the pitching because pitching's king around here, but I didn't mind doing it, and his name is Jackson, so. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll move on now. We'll talk about a trade I made with Connor. I went and got Esteury Ruiz, Connor Norby, and Yoniel Cure. Connor gets Masataka Yoshida and Jared Kelenic. Braxton, do you have any thoughts on this deal?
I like it for you a lot. I think that actually Connor Norby is going to be the best player in this deal. I am very, very high on him, and I like the Yoshida to Ruiz. I don't even consider that a huge downgrade, but yeah, I think he did pretty well, and I think Connor gets some consistency in the short term.
And Paul, do you have any thoughts on this trade?
I actually agree with Bracton. I think Connor Norby is the best player in this trade. Yoshida and Kalanick are very big question marks. Can they ever be consistent contributors? Yoshida, I mean, he's already 30, so maybe the book's already been written there. But Kalanick, obviously, we've talked about him at length. He's been traded a few times. We've talked about those trades. If he can be more than a platoon guy, if he can be the guy we all thought he might be when he was in Seattle, then this is an absolute grand slam for Connor. But until that happens, I'd have to say that I would lean Cody's side on this. Ruiz is at least a 40 stolen base guy. If he can ever hit 250, he's 800, 900 point bet. So yeah, I like it for Cody. Connor's really banking on Kelenic being a star. And if that happens, then he gets this trade. But he's probably in a position that he can take that gamble. So I can see it from both sides.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's an evenly kind of spread across value wise deal. I had a log jam with outfield bats. I tried shopping them. I wasn't getting any interest whatsoever. So me and Connor kind of came together on this. It ends up where basically I swap Ruiz for Yoshida, and I get two prospects that I like for Kellenic. So all in all, I think it's pretty even. Yoshida can probably be, in terms of 2024, he's probably going to be the best bat in this deal. But I'm hoping Ruiz can kind of catch some fire since he got called back up. When he plays, he does play well. It just seems like the A's aren't very interested in playing him right now. That's kind of frustrating. But, I think it's a fine trade. We'll move on now and talk about another trade Connor made with Paul. Connor got Xander Bogaerts. Paul got Garrett Mitchell, Matt Chapman, and Spencer Schwellenbach. Paul, let you talk about this one. What'd you think about this move?
I don't really like Bogarts. I think his game's kind of taken a turn. Obviously not, because he hit a home run today and basically buried me against Connor, which sucks. I like Garrett Mitchell a lot. I think when he comes back, he is the starting center fielder for the Brewers. I made the deal based on that, so hopefully that does happen. I think Spencer Schwellenbach is pretty underrated. I know he's 23 in high A, but he's had a few injuries in the past that I think he's finally over. I think he'll move quickly, potentially even into Atlanta this year. He's a guy that I've tried to keep. I haven't kept him in the past, but I'm trying now to keep him. And then Chapman, kind of a bench bat for me. I like him as a bench bat, though. He's strong. He's solid. My options at third base aren't particularly high, at least at the major league level. So he's the guy that I kind of was targeting, and it was more so me trying to get rid of Bogarts, but I got rid of him to the wrong team this week. So yeah.
All right. So we will go ahead and jump on into one of, if not the largest trade of the week, maybe the largest trade of the season thus far. Bry gets Julio Rodriguez, Freddie Peralta, Nick Lodolo, Michael Bush, Joe Nathan Clase, and Samuel Zavala. Paul gets Randy Arozarena, Bobby Miller, Logan Webb, Josh Naylor, Jason Dominguez, Christian Scott, and Victor Scott. Paul's kind of talked at length this week on Main Chat about his thoughts on the trade. So I thought, this trade's so big, let's get some outsider perspective, kind of some opinions of guys that weren't involved in the trade. Braxton, I'll let you jump in on this behemoth. What do you see with this massive move Paul made midweek?
So I'm in the minority that believe Paul did pretty well here, and I'll explain why. I feel like this point of the season, Julio Rodriguez was struggling. I know he got 33 points since the trade for Bry, but at the time it was not good at all, and I understood the frustration and the urgency to get this done, especially because I feel like Paul took a slight downgrade from Freddie Peralta to Logan Webb, like as minuscule a downgrade as it to get an upgrade from Nick Lodolo to Bobby Miller. So I feel like those two wash. I feel like he upgraded Michael Bush to Josh Naylor, and then upgraded Jonathan Klaas to Jason Dominguez, which is a huge upgrade to me. Dominguez is a top 75 dynasty asset in my opinion, and Christian Scott and Victor Scott for Samuel Zavala. I would do that. Anybody would do that 100 times out of 100, just to take the short term. What do you call it? Short term downgrade from Julio Rodriguez to Randy Arozarena. I think he did fine. I don't hate this move at all. And then Bry's chasing stardom. If Julio Rodriguez bounces back and becomes the true second best player in Dynasty like he is touted to be, then this move could be a massive home run for Bry. But if he stays the way he's been playing, and there's plenty of reason to be concerned. Uh, I think Paul did pretty well given the circumstances.
Yeah, so Brighton, a lot of what you said, I agree with. Um, this trade is really interesting to me. I've talked with to Paul in length about it privately after it went down. Just kind of giving him kind of my stance on it, and honestly, over the course of a couple days, kind of letting things settle, and honestly, just hearing Bracton, kind of the way that Bracton broke it down, I have kind of flip flopped back and forth on it. I still believe that Julio Rodriguez is a top 5, at worst top 10 dynasty asset, regardless of the early season struggles. I've told Paul that numerous times. I truly believe that. So anytime you lose a player like that in a trade, it is difficult for me to find any sum of value that equates to that, knowing what all that means. But Braxton, you brought up a really good point with the 4 pitchers to swap back and forth. And I would argue that, you said Freddie Peralta down to Logan Webb. It is a downgrade. You called it a minuscule one. I would argue it may not always be. Freddie Peralta can be inconsistent at times. I know he's dealt with injuries. Logan Webb is kind of very consistent. I think the only thing that keeps Logan Webb out of being kind of like a true fantasy ace is the strikeouts. He just doesn't quite strike out enough guys to have those massive 50-point performances in a 7-inning start. But I do find him to be way more consistent than I do, or maybe safer than a guy like Freddie Peralta, who I think can have those massive strikeout numbers in 50-point weeks, but can also get roughed up a little bit or end up on the IL for a month. So I think that's almost a matter of preference. That downgrade is so small. When we talk about the Lodolo to Bobby Miller thing, it's funny because your knock on Lodolo is, what are you going to get from him? He seems like he's hurt all the time. We know that there's a high ceiling there with him, but he was swapped here in this trade for a pitcher that's currently on the IL, Bobby Miller, and may be on there for quite some time. Now, Bobby Miller has a ceiling that is through the roof. I mean, in my opinion, he is kind of the Dodgers' next Walker Buehler. I hope the Dodgers can keep him healthier than they've kept Walker Buehler. But kind of interesting swap there. But I think no matter how you shake it, the advantage goes to Bobby Miller. The Michael Busch to Josh Naylor is a massive upgrade for Paul. Josh Naylor is very underrated and very good. It was kind of funny because when Paul and I was kind of discussing this trade, Paul mentioned to me that Josh Naylor was very underrated, and I almost replied to him, well, I don't know how underrated he is. You just traded Julio Rodriguez for him. But no, he is. Josh Naylor is very underrated. Safe to say top 5 first baseman. You could argue top 3 first baseman with Matt Olson struggling. Right now, Josh Naylor may be your favorite first baseman, but that's a huge, huge upgrade. I know Michael Busch hit like 5 or 6 home runs in a row or whatever. But I watch every Cubs game. He's not that great. So that's a massive upgrade. Probably the part where I disagree the most, and probably why when I seen this trade, I was so low on it initially, is because I think one of Paul's big gets in this trade was Jason Dominguez. And I think I do not have any value in that guy whatsoever. He's constantly hurt, constantly on the IL. That was the book on him when he came up as like a 16-year-old kid. And everybody was like, this guy's going to be incredible. They nicknamed him the Martian, but it was his body and how big and wide it is, and that it's going to stay injured because of the situation. And it seems like that is played out over several years. So when I first seen this trade go down and I realized that the big prize for Paul was Jason Dominguez, knowing how I feel about Jason Dominguez, I was like, I don't like this trade. But hearing Braxton break it down, kind of seen it from a different lens there. You do see that there's a lot of upgrades being made here. And another guy, Victor Scott with the Cardinals, I know he struggled. But to me, looking at this trade, he's who, in my opinion, who I think Paul thinks Jason Dominguez is. I think that's the get. That's your guy that's going to replace J-Rod. And I know there's been struggles, and he's going to have to be patient with him. And I don't know that Victor Scott is ever going to be considered the top 10 dynasty asset that Julio Rodriguez is, but I do think he can be considered a top 75 dynasty asset, a top 60, kind of somewhere in there, which if that happens, it makes this trade look a lot differently. Randy Rosarena's really scuffled this year, but there is a major track record of success there. It's going to be interesting to see what Paul decides to do with Randy. Is it a plug and play guy? Is it wait till he gets hot and using Paul's kind of deep in the outfield? So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what Paul's thoughts are with Randy. But yeah, I think by no means Paul got smashed in this deal. But anytime you lose Julio Rodriguez, it's difficult for me, but that's just the way that I manage. So Paul, I do want to give you a chance real quick. Like I said, I know you've talked ever since you made this trade, you've hammered on why you did it and kind of your thoughts on it. But I do want to ask you about Jason Dominguez. Was he the prize in this trade for you? Are you on Braxton's level high on him? Are you on my level low with him? Are you somewhere in the middle? I just kind of want your thoughts real quick before we move on Jason Dominguez.
Yeah, Jason Dominguez played 120 games in 2022, and he played 126 games in 2023. That's all I'm going to say about that. And yes, Jason Dominguez, I think he can be J-Rod level when he gets healthy. I mean, he had Tommy John surgery. He blew his arm out. It's not like the guy's, getting hurt like a knee injury or, like a shoulder injury. Like, he blew his arm out and he's not a pitcher. So I have no injury concerns with him whatsoever.
Interesting take there. Okay, we will move on now. Let's see. Let's talk about Paul. Let's hit this one real quick. You traded to Tita Adbert Alzolay and you got back Mason Montgomery. What were your thoughts with that move?
Adbert Alzolay is the worst fucking relief pitcher in the entire country. I'm glad that I was able to get something for him because Craig Counsell announced today that he's not even the closer anymore. So glad I could get out of that. I hate Alzolay. I don't want to see him anymore.
Understood. Okay, the next move we'll go into is Paul gets, this was today actually, or tonight, or last night, whatever. Paul got Jordan Montgomery. Smell gets Chris Paddock, Kyle Teal, DL Hall, and a second-round pick. Braxton, I'll let you jump on this. What did you think about this move with Paul getting Jordan Montgomery?
So I thought it was interesting how Smell played this. I want to talk about Smell first because Jordan Montgomery had been kind of a big question mark going into this because we've seen some of the Boris guys that held out over the summer start to get off to really slow starts, and we really didn't know what Jordan Montgomery was going to do. And then, of course, he drops a 30-piece today, or what do you call it? He had a 30-piece his first start. So maybe those concerns aren't necessarily there. So Smell, I think, got a pretty good haul here. I mean, I don't have any value in Chris Paddock whatsoever, but I love Kyle Teal. I still have hope in DL Hall, and the second is just another pick that Smell's going to add to his arsenal for this year. So for a 30-year-old pitcher, or 30-plus-year-old pitcher who I put in an offer and didn't get him, but I really think that I really like what Smell got for him. But Paul, at the end of the day, we're trying to win here. Jordan Montgomery is going to help you do that. So I have no complaints for either side, but I think that the most valuable asset going forward in this trade will be Kyle Teal. I have very high on Kyle Teal. I hope I can swing a deal and try to get him back at some point. But good on both sides, I feel like.
So, yeah, before I turn it over to Paul and let Paul talk about this move, I'll just touch base on it real quick. And I told Paul when the trade went down, this kind of goes back to the earlier part of the episode here where Paul said, "Show me where a pitcher's cheap." To me, it doesn't get any cheaper than this with what Jordan Montgomery provides. Chris Paddock is terrible. DL Hall is terrible. There's no way he's going to stick him around in Milwaukee's rotation, maybe even for another start. And then, of course, I am famous for undervaluing draft picks. A second pick is a second pick at the end of a second round pick is a second round pick at the end of the day. And then Kyle Teal. I'm probably don't see all the hype on Kyle Teal that the league's had. Recently, you can look back at his transaction history. He's moved several times, and I've never been involved in any of them. So really nothing does a whole lot for me there. And Jordan Montgomery's a guy that's going to step in, be a 20-plus point per game pitcher for Paul. This is the exact kind of arm I was saying that Paul kind of needs to build his rotation around. Jordan Montgomery type. Age be damned. It doesn't really matter to me that he's on the other side of 30. I think he's 31 or something. But yeah, I think to me, this is getting a pitcher cheap. I think Paul did really well in this trade. Paul, I'll let you go. What did you see with this move?
Yeah, I agree. Chris Paddock kind of a zero for me. I think DL Hall's made his last start in Milwaukee, at least for this year. I think when he comes back, because they just put him on the injured list, I think for like arm fatigue or whatever it was. I think they're just trying to, stop him, reset him, control his innings maybe a little bit. And when he comes back, he'll be like a long reliever. Maybe they'll have a bulk start or like an opener, and he'll be like a bulk reliever type of thing. Or they'll just put him in the eighth inning. But regardless, I think DL Hall, I think his arrow is down. I wanted to get off the ship before it went too far down. Kyle Teal's a great catcher. I think he's more of a batting average guy than a 25, 30 home run guy. Not great speed, but maybe he'll steal a few bases. His money will be made in his batting average. And I get a little leery of catchers that rely on batting average almost exclusively. Like, essentially, if you're not Adley Rutschman, like, that's really tough to do. Catchers that I think are better are like power guys, because it's not as hard to be a power guy. It is hard to have that wear and tear as a catcher and hit for a high batting average. So I like Kyle Teal a lot. He was the piece I didn't really want to move, but got me over the hump in this deal. And then that second, I value that second a lot, especially since I'm 0-3, and that second's potentially going to be around 18, 19 in this coming draft. So I wasn't super thrilled to give that either. But at the end of the day, Jordan Montgomery is a good pitcher. Like Bragton said, he missed basically all of spring training because he wasn't signed. Took a few weeks to get acclimated in Arizona. Had a really good start on Saturday, and that's kind of what led me to go, okay, this guy is ready. I think I've seen enough. I want to have him on my team. So, I mean, it's another pitcher. Cody said it's cheap. I'm not sure how cheap giving a top 40, 50 prospect and a teens pick in the upcoming draft is, but it is what it is. Hopefully now he'll, have a start for me that's not negative. That's kind of, if you have pitchers available that you can promise me won't go negative, I'll pay for them.
Absolutely. And we will move on to today where the league clearly woke up drunk. It was a wild trade day in the league. The first one kind of taking the cake on big time talent involved. Paul was the junior Caminero sweepstakes winner. Paul gets junior Caminero, Kerry Carpenter, and Bubba Chandler. Tita gets Colton Cowser, Nathaniel Lowe, Cade Povich, Marcelo Mayer, Samuel Basalo, and a first round pick. Brackton, jump on this one. A lot of these guys are kind of in your wheelhouse. What did you think about this trade?
Yeah, I mean, listening to y'all talk about Caminero last week, I kind of regretted trading him a little bit. Regretted it a little less after Pascantino had as big of a week as he did. But I think that I really like Paul getting. I think Paul got the best player. All right, so when you get the best player in the deal, I like you guys have kept saying it's hard to say that you lost it, but I feel like Paul gave up a lot here. Colton Cowser has got off to a huge start. We're going to talk about him more a little later, but I really like Colton Cowser. I like Nathaniel Lau a little bit. He's still under 30 first baseman, probably top 10 first baseman to me. Cade Povich is a dog. Um, Marcelo Mayer is a top 15 prospect to me. Basalo's top 50, 60. And then my first round pick is a wild card. I mean, I don't really rely a lot on first round picks because I don't know how teams are going to change that significantly in that time period. Because I mean, look at our league; we make these massive deals every day, every week, to where teams could look completely different in a week than they did 3 days ago. Like you know what I'm saying? I don't place too much stock in that pick. I know that Tita thinks that it could easily be first overall. I hope it's not first overall. But I mean, you never know. I do like Bubba Chandler and Kerry Carpenter too. It wasn't just 6 or 7 for one. I think Paul did very well, um, given the fact he got the best player in the deal and other assets.
Yeah, for me, definitely believe Paul got the best player in the deal by a pretty substantial margin. Um, I guess I've kind of been in the middle on Colton Cowser. I've heard some people that in the league are absolutely huge on him, and some people kind of wrote him off after his cup of coffee last year, and I think he started the season early in the season pretty slow, and then kind of had a massive week. I guess it was last week, maybe, but a really productive week. I still think that he is in no way, shape, or form on the tier of what Junior Caminero will be. Um, Kerry Carpenter was a good bat to get for Paul to kind of stick in the outfield. He's kind of an underrated player. He's had a really strong season so far. Um, Nathaniel Lowe probably sucks for Paul to give up. I think he's a very quality bat, but with getting Josh Naylor earlier in the week from Bry, it kind of made Lowe expendable. Um, Cade Povich is a guy that I think is just okay. Um, I'm not exactly sure how good he can be. He's kind of starting to age a little bit and hasn't debuted yet. But I think he's a decent kind of arm to have, Nick Nastrini level, in my opinion. Marcelo Mayer has had his struggles in the minor leagues, hasn't really progressed the way that he probably hoped he would, but still some pedigree there. High in name, he's top 30 on most rankings that you look at. It's just the production isn't really matching that. Samuel Basalo's a catcher, so I don't place a ton of value there. And then a first round pick, so I don't place a ton of value there. So I mean, I guess if Tito loves those guys, he got what he loves, and that's fine. But yeah, Paul getting Junior Caminero, that is a massive keystone piece to build around. I traded Junior to Brackton, and the only reason I did that is because I got Ellie De La Cruz. That was the kind of guy when I had Junior Caminero that I was willing to move, him for was a guy like Ellie De La Cruz, and I don't think Tita got anyone on that caliber. So, Paul, I'll let you talk. Kind of what were your thoughts with this move?
So I break it down: Kerry Carpenter and Chandler for Kauser and Povich. I would do that deal, just that 2-for-2. I like Kerry Carpenter a lot. I don't see a huge gap between him and Kauser. I know everyone thinks, Paul's an Orioles fan. He just must love Kauser. I think he's okay. I think he's good, but I think he's very volatile in terms of where his ceiling is and where his floor is. His ceiling is an all-star bat, hitting in the top, third of the lineup. But if he's not there and he doesn't, progress and he's not, that type of guy, he has potential to be a fourth outfielder. I think that low for his floor. Brett, and I said that to Braxton before he traded for him, which we'll talk about. But and then for Chandler and Povich is the same type of deal as Kauser. He has a lot of control issues, so walk can be a problem for him. But same thing, his strikeouts go crazy. He'll probably be up on the Orioles by June-ish, is my guess. So we'll find out pretty quick. But he's also already 24, I think. So it's he's got to kind of make hay or hit the road, basically go to the bullpen maybe. So Carpenter and Chandler for Kauser and Povich. So that leaves Nate Lowe, Mayer, Basallo, and the first for Caminero. Yeah, I'm gonna do that 10 times out of 10. I like Basallo a lot. I think he could transition to first base, which makes his bat even better, in my opinion. Mayer, I like a lot. Traded Job to get Mayer. But I kind of was looking at Mayer and Carson Williams, who I also got from Job, and I was trying to decide who I liked better. And I kind of thought that because it was a discussion, because it was a thought, that they were close enough that Tita strongly, I think, had a preference to Mayer versus Williams. And so I was like, well, if it's going to get this done, because Tita and I probably had Caminero conversations for about 3 straight days. And I was just at the end of my rope a little bit. And I was like, if it gets it done, it gets it done. I just want to be done with this, basically. And as for that first, I'm going to be a big Bismarck Larks fan next year. Hopefully it's not number one. Hopefully Braxton kind of competes. And I don't look like an idiot for that. But that's my breakdown. Junior Caminero. Hopefully he's a can't miss player. Hopefully he fulfills that potential at a premium position.
Absolutely. So we will move on to the next trade, just like not even an hour later. Smell gets James Wood. Braxton gets Colson Montgomery. Braxton, we'll get to you at the end on this trade. Paul, jump back in here. What did you see with this 1-for-1 swap of top prospects?
So Braxton knows I'm not a huge James Wood fan. I just think he's a little bit overhyped. And I said that in the main chat today. I just kind of think he's a little overhyped. But Colson Montgomery in the White Sox system, people are getting their jokes off that, oh, well, they developed him, blah, blah, blah. I think he's developing pretty well. I've been loosely following his career the last couple of years since he got drafted. I like Colson Montgomery a lot. I think he's up probably, June. They can use all the help they can get on the south side. So we'll kind of see, I think, and James Wood might be up soon for the Nationals. So this is a trade that we might see the fruits of pretty quickly. I think it's fairly even overall. not a huge deal. I think this was more of just preferences for each owner.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. For me, my preference would be Colson Montgomery for kind of all the reasons that you just touched on. James Wood just feels kind of overhyped to me. Not a guy that, I see where he's ranked on most lists. Every time I'm kind of going through that, I always think I'd probably have him about 20 or 25 spots lower. Colson Montgomery is a very intriguing prospect to me. I think the ceiling's really high. I think you're right. I think he is developing really nicely, and I think he's getting close to a debut in Chicago. And wouldn't be shocked to see when he is up if he stays up. So I see a little Chris Bryant in his game. Yeah, I'm talking more like prime Cubs, Chris Bryant. Um, but we'll see. Really good. Like you said, I think ultimately it goes down to preference. And, Smell preferred James Wood. Braxton preferred Colson. Braxton, what did you see with this deal? Why did you make it?
I'll be honest with you guys here. I kind of fucked up a little bit. I was under the impression that Colson Montgomery was going to play third base, or like was leaning towards third base, and that was how he was being developed. Because ever since I traded Caminero, I didn't really have a third base option. I kind of pivoted and traded for Curtis Mead as like a quick fix, platoon him with Shanuel, and maybe one of them develops and sees what happens. Like I added Oswaldo Cabrera, who's been playing well. Like I had a collection of guys, so I thought Colson Montgomery would be like, okay, this is it. Once he's up, I'll call him up. He'll play third base. No big deal. It's easier to find a prospect outfielder that I like than a prospect third baseman. But after doing some research and talking to some people, which I probably should have done before I made the trade, that's just me being good at this. Um, I found out he's going to play, he's leaning shortstop, which doesn't help me. I have shortstops, I have second baseman, I have those types of infielders. Third base was a big need. And I just, what do you call it? I don't know. I folded there and I made a panic pivot move um later on, which we'll talk about. But yeah. I like James Wood though. When you guys are talking about James Wood, I think James Wood's a dog. He reminds me of what do you call it? He's got that O'Neill Cruz, Ellie De La Cruz dog in him that appeals to me. So that's just my kind of thoughts on it.
Interesting takes there. Before we jump into your move where you later traded Colson Montgomery, I want to hit on this trade really quick. I find it to be pretty interesting. Jab gets Alex Clemmy, Simeon Woods Richardson, Yofri Rodriguez in a second. Connor gets Brandon Woodruff. Paul, what do you think about this move?
Sorry, I was typing something. What were we talking about?
Jab and Connor's trade, Brandon Woodruff.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah, it's a good future move. Woodruff obviously out for this year. He had a shoulder surgery, I'm pretty sure, which they're always tricky. But a guy like Alex Clemmy is a good get for Jab. The Guardian system, they know how to develop their pitching. Simeon Woods Richardson had a good start for the Twins. What was it, a few days ago, week ago, something like that. He's always been a guy that I've had my eye on, but never really wanted to necessarily own. But he, if he could get going, that's a good pickup. The other two are kind of lower end assets, but for Connor, getting a guy like Woodruff, if he comes back fully healthy, like he is Woodruff, that's a big get for him. He's the guy that could lead that rotation for Connor next year. So I like it for Connor. Jab kind of unloads the guy that he's not going to need for this year anyway, and picks up some decent assets in the meantime.
Yeah, I told Connor after this move was made, I absolutely love it for Connor. Kind of the wait and see approach with Woodruff, but if Woodruff does come back healthy, that would just be huge for Connor to have a guy like that in his rotation. He gave some quantity in this move, but not really any quality. So, I understand why Jab made it. He doesn't need Woodruff. He has no use for him sitting on his IL competing. And it's always good to kind of restock the farm system. For Connor, I think this is a really underrated move for him. He can kind of wait till Woodruff comes back and either trade him for more than he paid or, he's kind of got a top end of the rotation guy. So I see that move for Connor there. We will move on. Bracton's got some explaining to do with this one. Bracton gets Colton Cowser and Mike Soroka. Tita gets Colson Montgomery, Dane Dunning, Luis Hill, Alex Verdugo, and Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah.
Bracton, you got to have the floor because, man, I don't like anything about this trade. So tell us what was going on here.
Well, before I do that, I just wanted to add on to that Brandon Woodruff trade really quick.
Go ahead.
I like it for Jab a lot because I think, like you said, he doesn't need him, and he's getting assets that he can use to try and buy later on if he needs it, or if he believes in some of these guys like Simeon Woods Richardson's going to get called up here pretty soon because Louis Varland kind of blows. Like I think John Haidt, take notes. This is the kind of shit you should be doing. Like I think that you could start selling off some of these guys that are over 30 that are like injured like this or question marks and get 5 or 6 assets like this. Not even bad assets. Like I'm Simeon's Woods Richardson fan. I think he's very solid, and I like what both teams did because if Brandon Woodruff turns it around, there's no question Connor wins it. But for a competing team like that, I like it for Jab. But okay, I'll explain this thing now. Okay, Colson Montgomery to me, after finding out he wasn't a third baseman, yes, I know. I should have known that before I made the James Wood trade. That's my bad. I kind of freaked out a little bit thinking that I only had 2 outfielders that I trust in my entire organization, being the 2 Jacksons, right? So I was like, I needed an outfielder. And I was looking at Tita and I was like, you know what, Colton Cowser has been an absolute dog so far. And I'm not concerned that that's going to necessarily slow down. I know Paul was saying that what do you call it? The ceiling is an all-star and the floor could be a fourth outfield. I feel like that's how it is with any outfield prospect, really. But I trust Colton Cowser more than I trust guys in the Orioles system like Heston Kjerstad. I think that Colton Cowser's been playing better than Cedric Mullins or Anthony Santander or other guys like that so far. So I'm really not concerned with Colton Cowser at the moment as far as what his ceiling and floor looks like. I think he's playing well now and he fits the mold of my team, 24 years old. He's my oldest of my big 3 outfielders at 24 years old, which I love to see. But as far as what I gave up, Luis Gill is going to go to the bullpen when Garrett Cole comes back. So yeah, in the short term, he's in or out like Nestor Cortez is, or it's either going to be a really bad start or it's going to be a really great start. I know he did well today against Tampa Bay, but Tita and I were throwing names around like Hunter Brown. We were talking. He wanted Jackson Jobe, so we kind of just settled on Dunning and Gill. Dunning, I added him off the waiver wire last year, and he's been nothing but solid. I love Dane Dunning. I think he's great. But at the end of the day, he's pushing 30, so I was going to get rid of him eventually. Verdugo is nothing more than I think he could be replaced off the waiver wire with Brian Dela Cruz, whoever the top outfielder is on waivers, and that's not a huge difference. And then I traded Craig Kimbrell, who I really like, but again, closer over 30. But to me, a different way to look at it is I like trading a lot of assets for one thing. I've done it multiple times and traded 16 assets for Jackson Churio. I've done other types of like 10, 15 for one type deals. But if I were to convert these all into worse, I asked Paul this and what he would evaluate it as. Dane Dunning and Luis Gill probably 2 to 3 worse each. Let's say 5, give or take. Verdugo, I'd be lucky to get 1, so that's 6. and then Kimbrel's probably 2 or 1, depending on who you trade with. So let's say 8 worse than Colson Montgomery for Colton Cowser and Mike Soroka. Honestly, I'm cool with that. Like, if you guys don't believe in Cowser as much as I do, that's okay. But I really, really think this guy's legit, and he's going to be a perfect fit into my team here. And I like to look at the worst angle because it makes me feel a little better about it to just not assign the names to it, because I really do like Dane Dunning and Craig Kimbrell. But Gil and Verdugo really don't mean that much to me. I know Montgomery's going to be a dog, but I'm pretty set at shortstop with Volpe, and I have Zach Neto and some other guys that I like. But the outfield was a position in need for me getting rid of Wood, so that was kind of my thinking behind it. And I like Soroka, even though he's struggling and he kind of stinks. But if he's going to turn it around, it's going to be for me, so I'm happy about that.
Paul, do you have any thoughts with this trade?
Yeah, I do. So Cowser, we already talked about Cowser. I won't get too much into him, but I kind of break it down as like Verdugo and maybe like Dunning and maybe Gill, maybe that 3 for Cowser, and then it's Montgomery and Kimbrel for Soroka. So clearly, I like Tita's side on this. I think he did pretty well. I know Braxton likes Cowser, and for good reason. He has that potential, that high ceiling. And just like all his guys that have all the high ceilings, if it hits, then Braxton's a genius, and he's gonna be killing it. But it's he's bound to hit on some of those guys, right? Like they're not all going to be bad. So Braxton is building a good team. But the pieces that Tita got, he's collecting a ton of good pieces between the Caminero trade and this trade. He's got a lot of ammo, and it's kind of frightening to think about what he's going to do with that ammo, because now at the drop of a hat he could just say, okay, I'm going to trade Montgomery, Mayer, and Basalo, and I'm just going to go get a young ace. I'm not saying that he'll be able to do it, but I mean, that's probably his mindset. And, with already him being at least 2-1 or 3-0, I'm not sure what his record. Do you know what his record is, Cody?
What's that? Who?
Tita.
Tita's 3-0.
Yeah, so he's already 3-0, and he has just a ton of ammo now. So, I mean, watch out, hold your pocketbooks. I mean, he's coming for your pitching. He's coming for your bats. If that's what he chooses, maybe we'll see the side of Tita that's building maybe a dynasty team. But yeah, I guess I like it for Braxton that he gets Cowser. I like Cowser, obviously, but I kind of like the package more that Tita got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to crap on Braxton. It's just it's very skewed one way here. But I understand he likes Cowser, but I just wouldn't have paid a third of that for him. So, but I mean, if Braxton's happy with what he got, he's happy with what he got. You did tell me like 2 weeks ago that Alex Verdugo was going to hit 30 homers this year. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I do. That's pretty funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, like I said, I don't want to crap on you. Tita got a haul there. You got Cowser. If you're happy and Tita's happy, it is all good. We did have a 3-team trade go down shortly after that one. Not a ton to talk about with it. Tita got Lorenzen and Landon Morotis. Connor gets James Outman. Bry gets James MacArthur and Landon Knack. Does anybody have any thoughts on this move?
Good to see Connor get his boy Outman back. He's owned him a couple times, and I'm
I
glad
feel
he,
like
glad he
James
got
Outman
him.
belongs as a sod poodle.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to touch on this trade. Because man, I love this trade for Connor. Smell gets Ronnie Mauricio. Connor gets Yu Min Lin, Wilmer Flores, the Tigers pitcher, and a third. I've wrote Mauricio completely off. I'm sure some people haven't. Clearly, Smell hasn't. I really like this trade for Connor. Lynn, in Arizona has been decent. I don't think his ceiling's super high, but he's been decent. Wilmer Flores is a guy that everybody keeps saying is going to end up in the bullpen, but has pitched really, really well. I've seen several people say he's the best prospect in Detroit, and Jackson Jobe exists. The best pitching prospect in Detroit, and Jackson Jobe exists. So I've heard kind of highs and lows on him. And he gets a third round pick for a guy that is, to me, is a zero and has been for like 2.5 years. So I'm curious to see what Paul and Braxton think. If one of you guys want to jump in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not high on Mauricio either. I like that. I mean, pitching is king here, and I'm big on collecting as many young lottery ticket arms as you possibly can. But I mean, like you said, Wilmer Flores is better than a lottery ticket arm, and he gets 2 other minor league assets. So I'm with you. I think that oh wow, we got another deal to talk about in a little bit. But yeah, to finish up my thought on this one, I agree with you that Ronnie Mauricio I kind of have written off a little bit, and good deal for Connor.
Paul, any thoughts on the Mauricio trade?
Mauricio is a good player. He's fine. I don't know that I would have given 3 assets for him, but if Smell likes him, then he likes him. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And we'll talk about real quick here because the podcast is getting lengthy. Dave gets Bailey Ober. He gives basically 2 worse for him. Anybody have thoughts on that? Good get for Dave, in my opinion.
I like Austin Wells, but good get for Dave.
Absolutely. And Paul, announce your trade, man. Just went live.
Yeah, so I was working it during this pod. That's why I missed when you were talking about one of the trades. I was talking to Hamko. Yeah, I get Garrett Crochet. I gave up Kyle Schwarber, Sean Manaea, Edwin Arroyo, Braden Taylor, and my first round pick in 26. It's a haul. I know it's a haul, but I liked what I've seen from Garrett Crochet. I know he's been a reliever basically since high school, but I've watched every start of his with the White Sox this year. I'm sold. I think he's a stud. I think he's a future ace, and he's only 24 years old. I kind of maybe took advantage of Hamko panicking because he got blew up his last start against the Phillies. But, pitching's king. It's tough to give up a guy like Schwarber. I like Schwarber a lot. I think he's a easy 30 home run guy. They just don't grow on trees. But the rest of the offer, the rest of the deal, Manaea's fine. He's pitches for the Mets. Mets haven't been good this year. They've all kind of been down. Edwin Arroyo's out for the year. He's a good prospect, but he's going to miss a full year of development. We'll see what kind of effect that'll have on him. Braden Taylor's a tough one to give up, but I have Junior Caminero, so I'm not too worried about losing another third baseman prospect for Tampa. And now I don't have any first in 2026. Not ideal, but I'll get through it.
Braxton, you have any thoughts on this move?
I don't know. I told Paul a little earlier. He was looking at Crochet trade earlier in the week, and I told him I wasn't a huge fan, just because I don't love relievers coming to starters. I just, that's a weird tick with me. I don't really know why. I can't really explain it, but if he believes in him, he believes in him. Go get your guy. It's kind of like what I did with Cowser. I can't really I can't hate on anybody for doing that. And I like some of the pieces that Hamko got too. I think in the short term, Sean Mania can make up for Crochet production, and then Hamko needs to kind of revamp his bats here, which he did with Schwarber and 3 nice minor league assets. So I think if both sides are happy, then everything's all good.
Yeah, for me, this is kind of indication that Paul's on a warpath here, going out and getting dudes. Garrett Crochet, really interesting arm to trade for. I just told Paul a little bit ago. Crochet's kind of one of those guys. What guy are you getting? Are you getting this week's Crochet? Or are you getting the first 2 weeks? A lot of risk involved, but if Crochet is what he has shown flashes he can be, this is a landslide victory for Paul. For Homco, it was time to shake things up. It was time to move things around. Paul is a White Sox fan and is the opposite of a homer. He's probably the lowest person on the White Sox I've ever spoken to. He's decided to give up on Crochet. He gets Schwarber, who is just consistent. You know what you're going to get with him. Mania is Edwin Arroyo is a nice prospect. Braden Taylor, I love personally, and then a first-round pick. So, Omco gets a nice little package there for Crochet. Paul assumes all the risk in this deal, in my opinion, but the payout for that could be absolutely massive if Crochet really reaches his potential. But yeah, Paul has kind of declared war on the league, and he is going out and getting some arms. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we move forward into week 4. Speaking of week 4, we will transition now to the last part of the podcast where we talk about the week 4 kind of matchups, preview what week 4 is going to look like. We'll jump right in here. I'm kind of glancing around to what seems intriguing. Let's talk about Bry versus Hen Dog. Clearwater Beach Dogs versus the Rocky Mountain Vibe. Paul, I'll let you go first. Who wins this matchup and why?
Go to Braxton first. I'm trying to
Braxton, jump in. Who wins Beach Dogs versus the Vibe?
I like Bry this week. I think Bry's got better pitching. I think that if he can maintain a 50 to 100 point gap with Hen Dog's bats, which I believe is possible if guys like Devers and Albies and other guys that were struggling for O'Neill Cruz, like those type of guys that were struggling with Bry this week when he put up 755. I think if he can maintain 50 to 100 point gap with Hen's bats, the pitching will take care of itself and Bry will win.
Yeah, I'm going to give the advantage to Bry as well. The pitching for me is what stands out. I am going to say this about Hen Dog's team. The bats are going to keep him in every matchup. This matchup is going to be really close, but just looking at it on paper, I see the advantage in the arms department for Bry. I would give the win to Bry. Paul, jump in with who wins and why.
Yeah, really good matchup. I've said that Hen has the best team. I'll stick by that. I'll take Hen. I think the bats slightly favor Hen. I know that Bry has J-Rod now, but I'll still lean towards the Beach Dogs.
Okay, the next matchup we will talk about is my matchup versus Chad's Oklahoma City 89ers. In this matchup, I won't pick. Braxton, I'll let you go. Who wins between me and Chad and why?
I think you're going to win, but it's going to be really close, like 50 to 100 points. I've been impressed with what I've been seeing from Chad to start the season, but I certainly don't think he's an easy out. And although I believe you're the best team in the league right now, I think that Chad's going to give you a run.
And Paul, who wins this matchup and why?
Cody wins this matchup. Not as close as Braxton thinks. Cody will be around 700, 750 like he always is. And Chad will be between 600, 650. That's probably, I'm trying to see his starts. I mean, he's got 12 starts for the week, so I mean, he'll have a good performance. We all know that Chad's building a monster, but that monster's still just a little too small to take down the hot rod. So Cody wins.
Okay, and now we will jump right into another matchup of really strong teams. Jabs Sea Dogs against Tita's Nashville Sounds. Jabs 2-1, Tita's 3-0. Is Tita legit? He just took down John Height. You have to say he is legit. However, I'm going to go with the Sea Dogs to get back to their winning ways. I just think the Sea Dogs are a better team. I do think this matchup will be close, but I am going to give the advantage to Jab and the Sea Dogs. Braxton, who wins this matchup and why?
I'm gonna pick Tita until he loses. That's what I'm
That's
gonna.
right.
That's just what I'm gonna do.
And Paul, who wins this matchup and why?
So this will be a really. I mean, I know that last week was a true test, beating John Height, taking down the monster that is the Hartford Yard Goats. But I mean, Jab's got a really good team. The bats are pretty similar, if not better, than what John Height has. But the arms are the true test here because Jab's got some really good arms. Gossman, if he's going to bounce back. Bryce Miller's been really good. Aaron Nola, but he's only got one start. I'm going to also take Tita just because I believe in the owner more than I believe in the team. And there's probably exactly a 0.0% chance that the team we see this tonight right now is what we'll see when we do this next week. So I'll take Tita. He'll make every move he has to make to take down Portland and take down Jab.
Absolutely. And now let's jump into the new look Norfolk Tides versus Dave and coming off his win, the Red Wings. Braxton, who wins this matchup and why?
I think Paul's new look team is gonna get the win here against Dave. If not, then I think that would just be pretty tragic. I think he's gonna handle it within 100 and 150 points. I don't think it's really gonna be close.
Paul, well, you're playing. You don't have to pick, but just give us the rundown on what you see this week having to go against Dave.
So I've been thinking a lot in my sorrows about the state of my team and switching it up. And it brings to mind, although I did not like him for what he did to Purdue in the national championship, it brings to mind Dan Hurley. And 2 years ago, when they lost to Villanova, in his press conference, he said, "Get us now." He said, "Get us now while we're losing, while we're down. Get us now, because we're not going to be down here forever." And that's kind of what I feel like my team. My team, they struggled, lost to Connor, probably the low point for the Norfolk Tide franchise. But I'm looking up from here, and I'm moving on. I'm moving on from J-Rod. I'm moving on from all of it, from all the BS that happened this week. I'm moving on from it, and it's new beginnings, and hopefully it starts with a win. I don't know if it will. We'll see. But even if I don't beat Dave, I'm not giving up. I won't give up. It's not like I have really anything to sell anyway. I mean, all my guys are like, all my at least star players, like Gunnar Henderson, are like 25, 26 and under. So what am I going to sell for? Like a 23-year-old? Like I'm not going to sell at this point. So I'm going to ride it out. I'm going to make moves. I'm going to do what I got to do to try and get wins. And that's all I'm going to do. So, get us now. That's kind of my mantra right now.
Yeah, so after that, man, yeah, I'd run through a brick wall for the Norfolk Tides right now. I'm gonna say my hot take of the week is gonna be the Tides break 700 this week in just a complete revenge. Poor Dave, he did nothing to Paul, but he's catching Paul at the worst possible time. Paul's working that roster right now, trying to get this team back to their winning ways. And I think it happens this week. I think Paul cracks 700 points, and I think Dave loses by 250 points. Moving on now, we'll talk about Smell and the Chihuahuas versus John Height and the Yard Goats. Looks like John Height for me is going to turn this losing. He's going to end his losing streak at 1 and get back in the win column. Braxton, what do you see? Who wins and why?
Nah, he's gonna lose the Smell too. Let's keep it going.
And Paul,
I'm
who
just
wins and
kidding.
why?
I'm joking. He's gonna win by 250. It's fine.
Yeah. So this is a great get right week for John Height. But more than a get right week, this is a good week to do what I did last week. John Height is talented enough that he can overcome, some of the shortcomings that I had against Connor. This is a good week to shake it up a little bit if I'm John Height, because Smell, he'll put up 450, 500 points. You can beat that while your roster's still in transition a little bit. But if I'm in John Haight's shoes right now, I'm looking at every single roster, identifying guys that I can trade away, and identifying guys that I want. And I'm not stopping until I have those guys. That's what I did this week. So if I'm John Height, that's what I'm doing. Take my advice. Don't take my advice. Clearly I don't know what I'm doing in this league, but that's what I would do. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so for me, of course, I picked the matchup. John Haight's going to win, but I'm sitting here thinking about this podcast, and John Height is 100% going to listen to it, and we're telling him exactly what to do to get his team back, kind of to dominant status. So it's going to be interesting if he kind of jumps in the trade pool and fixes his pitching, because if he fixes his pitching, he's up there with Hen and Bry and me. I mean, he probably already is, even with the pitching what it is. So it's really going to be interesting to watch John Height and see what he does, especially after listening to this podcast. Do we motivate him to go out and make some trades, or does he just sit in his nursing home clubhouse and put Ben Gay on old people? So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what John Height decides to do. We will move on. We got 2 more matchups to discuss for week 4. Braxton, we'll talk about your matchup with the Cannonballers. I'm going to say Braxton gets his first win of the season. He's projected for 15 starts. Bold strategy there. But I think Homco's kind of, we talked in this podcast about kind of retooling. I think Homco may actually do some selling just by the Garrett Crochet trade, and then he's just posted a block with some bats on it. So if that continues to happen this week, I definitely think Braxton would have the advantage, and it's also going to depend on Braxton's young guys. They had a down week last week. I expect them to have a good week this week. I'm going to say Braxton gets the win, first win of the season. Paul, who wins this matchup and why?
I think it'll be close. I'll also take Braxton. It's going to be interesting to see how much guys like Jackson Holiday will play. Nolan Gorman, bad weeks, bad seasons pretty much for both of them. We'll see how much they actually get to play. So that could impact this week. But like you said, I think this is a kind of a week of transition for Homco. The trade that he just made with me is kind of a signal that he's starting that process. And I think, like me, his team isn't equipped enough to handle a week in transition. So for that reason, I'll take Braxton to get his first win.
Absolutely. Let's look here.
Cody, I'm going to pick myself too, just because I've outscored Homco in the last 3 weeks, all 3 weeks, even though some of them have been with under 15 points. I feel like I think I've got enough in the tank here to get my first win this week.
Love to see the confidence in your squad, man. All right, the last matchup of week 4. It's actually more intriguing than I think maybe it looks like on paper. These are 1-2 teams, and I think both guys may be trying to push the envelope to be that kind of last team that enters the playoff hunt here. Connor's coming off a big win against Norfolk. Scott had a great week last week against Oklahoma City. I've been back and forth a little bit. I'm going to go with Scott, though. Coming off a week like he just came off of, it's easy to say, well, he'll get back down to earth, but it's really hard to pick against him right now if his team's playing that well. So I'm going to give the advantage to Scott, but I do think Connor will keep it close as he has all season. Braxton, who wins and why?
I agree with you. I think Scott's got the edge in pitching, and I think that's going to be a difference maker. And I love some of the bats that Scott has, as we've discussed earlier on. So I think Scott will win. Both teams will be in the 550 to 600 range, and it'll be pretty close.
And Paul, who wins and why?
So I'll also take Scott, but I mean, for me in this matchup this past week, the biggest thorn in my side, pain in my ass, was Nick Martinez for the Cincinnati Reds. With Montas getting hurt today, it's probable that he'll miss his next start, and Martinez might be the guy that takes that start. I think that would be bad news for Connor because I think, in my opinion at least, a guy like that, you'd rather have him pitch 2, maybe 3 times this week and just pick up 10 to 15 points each time. That's worth more than just a single start, in my opinion, unless that start just goes crazy. But for that, I think it's a break for Scott. But just overall, I think Scott has, the better bats. Bryce Harper, C.J. Abrams, Cedric Mullins, even Mountcastle I see there. So because of that, I'll take the slight edge to.
All right, so that will wrap up our week 4 preview. As we conclude the podcast, I want to pass it around the room for any final thoughts. Braxton, I'll let you go first. Any final thoughts from week 3 or going into week 4?
I hope my young kids can start playing ball for real. I hope Jackson Holiday has a nice week. I hope Anthony Volpe has a nice week. I hope I get some better pitching performances because I'd really like to get a win here against Tomco. Maybe get a different type of look at this season if I win this week. So get some flexibility going. We'll see.
And Paul, any final thoughts as we head into week 4?
I'll echo it again. Get us now, because like I said, I'm making moves to try and get this team in the right direction. Just a heads up, Kyle Bradish has had a couple rehab starts already. Bobby Miller is gonna throw tomorrow, apparently. So Joan Duran, the closer for the Minnesota Twins, his rehab assignment starts Tuesday. So the Tides are getting healthy. Might want to watch out. But overall, this is a big week for me. A team like Dave, not a single ounce of offense to Dave, but I think I should win. Although again, no offense to Connor, I should have won against Connor. I didn't, didn't get done. So this is a big week. To go on 4 and come back from that would be astronomically tough, especially after playing Connor and Dave. I know I have tough matchups down the road, so I gotta try and turn this around if I have playoff intentions, which I genuinely do. So big week for the Tides.
Yeah, for me, it's been, but it's crazy that we're heading into week 4 of the season. The next time we do one of these will be a month in. Crazy how quickly the season's going. really my take over the first 3 weeks is just how competitive this league is. We have two 0-3 teams, Paul and Bracton. Paul made the playoffs last year, eliminated me from the playoffs last year. Bracton was right in it. I think he was eliminated in week 19 from playoff contention the last week of the season, if I remember correctly. And those are your two teams at the bottom of the standings right now. We really, really have, a strong competitive. I mean, every matchup, is difficult, and it's really good. The league is in a really good spot right now.
No.
League wide, looking at the standings, a couple things. You got to shout out Tita at 3-0. We only have 3 undefeated teams left. Myself, Dog, and Tita in the Nashville Sounds. So congrats to Tita for so far remaining undefeated with a somewhat tough schedule. Tita's had some tough matchups and unblemished record right now. So I want to shout out to that. Let's see what else here. John Hyde at 2-1, Bright 2-1, Sea Dogs at 2-1. So really, to me, the 1 and 2 and the 0-3 teams, that's what I'm looking for to see. That is Scott, Connor, Paul, Bracton, Homco, Dave, Smell, and Chad. Probably 2 or 3 of those teams is going to rise up out of that group and really contend for playoff spots, maybe even 4 teams. So it's going to be interesting to see which of those teams rise up and which of those teams fall off. So that will conclude the week 3 edition of the Base on Balls podcast. We will be back next week to talk about week 4, and hopefully Paul will be in a better mood. But we are signing off, guys. We will talk to you next week.